Interlagos in Brazil hosted the first Formula One Grand Prix of 1976, the Argentine race being cancelled for economic reasons. Local hero Emerson Fittipaldi was here, joining brother Wilson in the family-run Copersucar Fittipaldi team. All the main rivals had been working hard over the season, and it was a surprise to some that Fittipaldi had left the dominant McLaren outfit. Niki Lauda, the reigning world champion, stayed at Ferrari, teammate Clay Regazzoni. And there had been a host of changes across the winter, new cars, new teams, new combinations for the fans to get used to. At Tyrrell, Patrick Depailler and Jody Scheckter stayed in place, and there were fantastical rumours of a six-wheeled car. Jean-Pierre Jarier, Patrick Depailler, Jacques Laffite, Guy Ligier, all part of the big French presence in the field. It was Niki Lauda, the reigning world champion, and Ferrari that most expected to fare best at the start of the season.
Jean-Pierre
Jarier thinking perhaps he might be able to win the Brazilian Grand Prix. Patrick Depailler reckoning that Tyrrell might be good for a podium. Jacques Laffite, well, we'll do better in the races, said young Jacques, than in the warm-up. Jarier is saying, I hope luck will go my way, while team owner Guy Ligier say the warm-up went pretty much as we expected. We knew we'd struggle, but I think we've got a good setup for the race. Well, in those days, Interlagos was 7.9 kilometres, 40 laps the race distance. And James Hunt, the English driver, brought in to replace Fittipaldi at McLaren, immediately taking up the front running. Niki Lauda also on the front row, but it was Clay Regazzoni who led the early going from Lauda. The Ferraris looked to be starting the season in the dominant form with which they'd finished 75. Only Hunt's McLaren hanging on to the two red machines. Further back, Brabham battled Lotus as Ligier and Tyrrell also went wheel to wheel. But trouble reared its ugly head early on for Regazzoni, a slow puncture dropping him behind world champion Lauda. As Lauda pulled away, Regazzoni was holding up the rest. Hunt squeezed by him. And then Jarier in the shadow with its Cosworth DFV engine taking up the running in third place. Jean-Pierre Jarier looking increasingly competitive. And having disposed of Hunt, Niki Lauda became the target for the Frenchman. Jarier was lapping at astonishing speed. 8 seconds gap soon became 2. And it looked as though the Shadow might have an astonishing win in the opening race. But he was caught out on oil from James Hunt's McLaren, and that soon left Niki Lauda to romp away. The demise of Jarier promoted Depailler's Tyrrell into second place, but it did allow Tom Price in the other Shadow to move up to third. And that showed that Jarier's performance was no fluke, as Lauda claimed race number 1 in the 76 title hunt. Round 2 in South Africa, 6 weeks after Brazil. Summit meeting between Niki Lauda and James Hunt. Hunt for the second time in the season on pole position. Well, they were already shaping up to be the title rivals as Guy Ligier and new young star Jacques Laffite discussed the chances of their car for the weekend. Well, with Hunt moving from the Hesketh team into the big leagues with McLaren, replacing Emerson Fittipaldi, this was certainly his best chance at the championship title. But for Fittipaldi and brother Wilson, running their own team was a dream come true that was soon to turn into a nightmare. With Hunt again on pole, the field gets away 5 and 6 wide down the long front straight at Kyalami. And again the V12 power of Niki Lauda's Ferrari tells as he leads the Englishman into the first turn. Lotus had swapped its drivers Mario Andretti and Ronnie Peterson for Bob Evans and another Swede, Gunnar Nilsson. Andretti joined the Parnelli outfit. Peterson had gone to March, but Lauda stayed with Ferrari, and he was comfortably leading the early stages of the South African Grand Prix. The super tall airboxes marking out the progress of the Ligier, the first car to wear French racing blue in Grand Prix racing since the retirement of Amedée Gordini's eponymous outfit in 1956. With Jacques Laffite at the wheel, the car going well, but not as well as Lauda's Ferrari, leading comfortably. Regazzoni mired in the midfield in battles of his own. James Hunt's teammate Jochen Mass passing the slowing Lotus of Gunnar Nilsson. Clutch problems putting him out on lap 32. Behind Lauda, Hunt second, Mass in third, but Mass better than 40 seconds further back. And that's the way they finish at Kyalami. The McLarens unable to match the Ferrari for pace, and Niki Lauda makes it 2 wins to start the season. Another first for 1976, the US Grand Prix at Long Beach. The US Grand Prix West in the shadow of the ocean liner, the Queen Mary. A street circuit fenced by wire and concrete on the roads of the Californian town. Short, 3.2 kilometers long, and new to everybody. Well, the new French team of Ligier finding their way in this sport. At Tyrrell, plenty of experience, and their light and nimble cars may well shine well around the circuit. The Cosworth DAFV, lighter, perhaps more reactive in the changing, turbulent nature of a street circuit than the big V12s of Ferrari. Well, Patrick Depailler claimed second on the grid, but Regazzoni was quite superb around Long Beach, taking pole position. Hunt in the McLaren, looking for second into the first turn, goes inside Depailler. Further back, plenty of bumping and banging in the tight entry to corner number 1. Vittorio Brambilla off on lap 1, as were Carlos Reutemann and the unfortunate Gunnar Nilsson. And they were to be the first of many. Hans Stuck forced out on lap 2. James Hunt saw only 2 laps completed. He was out by number 3. So was this to be a turning point in the season? Hunt out again with no points, but Lauda romping on. Lauda moved up to second, ahead of Depailler. So now, with Tyrrell's in third and fourth, it was a Ferrari 1-2. New tracks are supposed to be great levelers. Nobody has an advantage in knowledge or setup information. But it seemed that Ferrari still were the quickest cars. The nimble Tyrrell chassis certainly gave a very good account of itself around the tight and twisty turns of Long Beach. Quite what the American fans made of it all, though, nobody was quite yet able to tell. As Ferrari and Tyrrell dominated proceedings, the progress of Jacques Laffite's Ligier was starting to raise press room eyebrows. He moved up through the field and eventually made it into 4th spot, claiming the first ever World Championship points for the team. Jochen Mass in 5th place in the remaining McLaren, and Emerson Fittipaldi in the new Copersucar Fittipaldi, claiming the final point for 6th position. Despite the presence of Lauda behind him, Clay Regazzoni romped away to victory, scoring his first win on the streets of Long Beach. Ferrari again dominant, in the US Grand Prix West. It's a season of firsts, 1976, and perhaps the most impressive and spectacular of all comes from Tyrrell. Innovative engineering, as Patrick Depailler explains, in this Tyrrell-type P34, Formula One's first six-wheeled car. The chassis is brand new, the front axles wide to allow the car to carry these two big pontoon tanks behind. Different airbox, of course. The rear end of the car looks pretty conventional, but it's the front end with the two tiny wheels out front to try and reduce drag and increase the front end mechanical grip that marks out the Tyrrell. Faster than the old car in a straight line, cuts down the drag, better braking and better grip through the corners. Not yet as fast as a Ferrari, reckons Patrick Depailler, but it is early days and we're hoping to be able to develop the car into a real winner.
Ces trois qualités ensemble font que la voiture est très légèrement plus rapide que notre ancienne voiture, ce qui ne veut pas dire plus rapide qu'une Ferrari actuellement. On l'espère, mais ce n'est pas encore prouvé.
Six wheels then. Ken Tyrrell's team stunning the opposition. Ex-driver Jackie Stewart talking to McLaren boss Teddy Mayer. They too at a loss of what to make of it. Well, the car is a completely different proposition for the drivers from what they're used to. Designed by Derek Gardner to improve air penetration, improve front-end grip and braking. King Juan Carlos of Spain enjoying a joke with Depailler and with Ken Tyrrell. Pole again for James Hunt, the lead again for Niki Lauda. But the Tyrrell in the second row of the grid, third and 14th after the warm-up. Depailler at ease in this bizarre-looking new departure for Formula One. In the era of enormous balloon tyres, the Tyrrell looks like the front wheels have dropped off when you first catch sight of it. Hunt, after the unlucky and unfortunate start to the season, sticking to his task, chasing Lauda for all he's worth. And notice that Ligier has done away with that enormous snorkel airbox, resorting to something a little more streamlined. Regazzoni down the field, but Lauda at the front. Jochen Mass has now passed Depailler, so McLaren's are second and third, with Lotus fifth and sixth. Niki Lauda competing in some pain. He'd injured two ribs in an accident at home before the race and soon succumbed to the agony. Hunt moving into a lead and then running away with the Spanish Grand Prix. As Lauda struggled into second place, Hunt was left to take the checkered flag, but the victory was a short-lived one. The McLaren was found to be 16 millimetres wider than allowed, and after the checkered flag, Hunt was disqualified. Lauda, it seems, won the race after all. Round 5 of the series at the Belgium circuit of Zolder. And the news that Parnelli Jones has thrown in the sponge, his racing operation running out of finance for its Formula One outfit. Mario Andretti returns then to Lotus alongside Gunnar Nielsen. But in qualifying, Emerson Fittipaldi and Jackie Ickx both failed to make the cut. Ferrari's monopolised practice. Lauda qualifies on pole ahead of Regazzoni, but it's to be the Austrian's only pole position of what will become an increasingly topsy-turvy season. Amazingly, given the way that the Ferraris have started so far this year, Hunt gets the best of the start and he slips between Lauda, the leader, and Regazzoni to claim second place. John Watson in the midfield in the Penske. Regazzoni, though, soon makes the most of the Ferrari's power. Hunt's tenure of second place won't be a long one. Through the tricky chicane at Zolder, the drivers slip and slide. Lafitte showing strongly, as is Depailler, the Frenchman in the Ligier and the Tyrrell respectively, chasing the red and white cars out front. Lauda's left to cruise away. Regazzoni is by Hunt for second place. And the Englishman in the McLaren feeling the pressure of the Ligier right behind. Depailler and Scheckter, fourth and fifth in the increasingly competitive-looking Tyrrells. Lotus battles Brabham in the midfield, with Ronnie Peterson's March hanging on there as well. But Hunt is soon in problems. As the Ferraris come through, Jacques Laffite has moved up into third position. Depailler's engine has gone sick. Hunt's gearbox is playing him up, and the Tyrrell and McLaren driver join each other, dropping down the order. Scheckter hangs on to fourth, and young Australian Alan Jones in John Surtees' car comes up to fifth place. Hunt's gearbox finally cries enough, and the Englishman will fail to score yet again. Scheckter in fourth spot, but nobody can touch the runaway Ferraris. Lauda and Regazzoni. Ligier of Laffite in third place. Another podium finish for the Frenchman. Niki Lauda delighting his supporters with another dominant show. Wins by 3.5 seconds from Regazzoni, 35 ahead of Laffite. Scheckter in fourth, a minute and a half back.
Nouvelle chicane à Saint-Dévon pour ralentir la vitesse des voitures. Pour éviter aux voitures d'aller dans la foule en cas d'accident. Et c'est très bien. Difficile freinage pour le virage de la Rascasse qui est en première. Après la Rascasse, une modification, une nouvelle chicane à l'entrée de la ligne droite qui se prend en première et la ligne droite.
Six-wheel view of Monaco from Patrick Depailler's Tyrrell. At the start of the race, poleman Niki Lauda claimed the lead with the march of Ronnie Peterson in second place. James Hunt down the order in the McLaren. Was it going to be another tough time for Hunt? Maybe so. Well, as Super Swede Peterson held up Regazzoni and the six-wheel Tyrrells, James Hunt was stuck behind his own teammate Jochen Mass, out of the top 10. Lauda was imperious, Peterson expressive, Regazzoni stalwart in his defence. Depailler and Scheckter tenacious. The South African taking up the running for the Tyrrell team. A bump at the swimming pool put Peterson out of action. The Swede disconsolate as he walked away, and the car breakage putting James Hunt out as well. Lauda and Regazzoni leading for Ferrari. But Regazzoni went straight on, exiting the tunnel, dropping down to 4th, before retiring 4 laps from the end with another incident. Lauda leading, but the Tyrrells coming home in 2nd and 3rd. On this most tricky of all circuits for grip, those extra front wheels seem to be working well. Lauda again setting the agenda in the Ferrari. Tyrrell rising to the challenge with their unique challenger. But it was the champagne for the Austrian. Super Rat wins again at Monaco. Round 7 of the series, 6 wins so far for Ferrari. Could they make it 7? Former champion Jackie Stewart, as always, interested in the goings-on. Maybe, though, the Tyrrell team would pull something out of the bag. Maybe Ronnie Peterson would fare well at home. Ken and Nora Tyrrell, as ever, looking over proceedings. And the Anderstorp circuit, perhaps allowing home heroes Peterson and Nielsen a chance to shine. But in fact, Anderstorp 76 was all about Mario Andretti and Lotus. He'd missed Monaco to race in the Indy 500, but Mario was back in black, and Lotus with pole position, returning to their former front-running form. Leading the Tyrrells away, Andretti making sure of his position into the first turn. McLaren and Ferrari struggling halfway down the top 10. But Sweden would be all about Andretti. Barely looking back, he would romp away from the field. For 45 laps, Andretti looked impervious until finally his engine would let him down. What then for the Tyrrells? Like Andretti, powered by Cosworth's venerable V8 engine that had debuted back in 1967. But the twists and turns of Anderstorp, like at Monaco, allowed the little six-wheelers to show their form. Well, with Andretti out of the running, Tyrrell with first and second. Niki Lauda in third position. And so it was that history would be made at the little Swedish airport circuit. On the 13th of June 1976, a car with 6 wheels for the first time would win a Formula One Grand Prix. Jody Scheckter, the man to claim the honour, teammate Patrick Depailler backing the South African up in second spot. Lauda claimed third, Lafitte fourth, Hunt fifth, Regazzoni in sixth. Paul Ricard, the venue for the French Grand Prix, as we ride on the nose of the six-wheeler with Jody Scheckter. Stay with us as we pick up the action in a moment at one of the more critical points of the 76 season. 76 World Championship, the French Grand Prix. Niki Lauda, the comfortable points leader with 5 race wins. Tyrrell's Jody Scheckter in second place, 18 points behind him. But everything will change in France. James Hunt took pole, but Lauda used the V12 power of the Ferrari to take the lead. Ferrari had already won all but one of the races. 5 wins to Lauda, 1 to Regazzoni, and no mechanical retirements all season. They were fast, and so far they'd been impregnable, but all that was about to change. By lap 8, Hunt was in the lead. Lauda's engine had cried enough, and the Ferrari dropped out of the reckoning. 10 laps later, Regazzoni had the same fate befall him. The 1.8 kilometre length of the Mistral Straight, clearly too much, overspeeding the V12. Meanwhile, the Cosworth engine cars continued to take the battle to the Matra V12 engined Ligier. Hunt was out front. Winner on the road in Spain and later disqualified. Could this be his first victory of the season? Depailler in second place in the Tyrrell. Teammate Scheckter had won in Sweden, but he was not so lucky in France. Ronnie Peterson and John Watson were giving him plenty of headaches, and in the end it would be Watson in the Cosworth-powered Team Penske car who would take third spot. And what a day it was to be for James Hunt. A win on the road in France, and the FIA Appeals Commission reinstated the points that were taken off him when he was disqualified from Spain. So he gained 18 points in less than 2 weeks. Lauda actually lost 4. The championship looks a very different proposition after France. July the 18th, and alternating as usual with Silverstone, it was Brands Hatch that played host for the British Grand Prix. Lauda had a 26-point championship lead, but it was now Hunt who was his closest rival. 2 women entered for practice. Lella Lombardi and Davina Galicia both failed to qualify. But all eyes were on Hunt the Shunt, Britain's Formula One hero, who is now taking the battle for the title with McLaren to the Ferraris. Hunt and Lauda on the front row of the grid, but the start descended into drama and chaos. As the leading Ferraris touched, Hunt was pushed out, so too was Lafitte. Hunt drove into the back of the pits, and then the race director threw the red flags. There were no cars blocking the track, and for a while it looked as though Hunt would not be allowed to restart, but crowd pressure brought him back onto the grid. A stalled Lotus at the second start meant that there was more drama in store. Well, Lauda leading from Hunt, Regazzoni in third place. The enormous crowds packing the banks around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, willing on the English hero. Sliding Tyrrell in fourth place as Scheckter finds that front-end grip was easier to come by than rear-end grip. But Lauda easing away from Hunt. Despite problems with his gearbox, the Austrian starting to pull away early on. But as Hunt has experienced earlier in the season, gearbox problems rarely get better, and soon Lauda had lost the lead. The Englishman was in front, the crowd baying for his success. A result he duly delivered, a result which was taken away under protest from Ferrari, Tyrrell and Copersucar. Hunt was again stripped of a win. The German Grand Prix held at the fabulous Nürburgring Nordschleife. The ribbon of tarmac winding through the trees was not universally liked by the drivers. Jean-Pierre Jarier saying it's too long, it's a dangerous circuit that belongs in the past. And those prophetic words cruelly were to ring true in 76. Hunt and Lauda again battling for honours in qualifying. And once more, the Austrian and the Englishman would start on the front row of the grid. the traditionally quirky weather, as well as the jumps and the high speed, the lack of safety, all worrying Jacques Laffite. For Niki Lauda, the performance of the car, and particularly that worrying gearbox, was what his concentration was focused on. Lauda had a 35-point lead as they started the race under leaden skies on a wet track. Only Jochen Mass had opted for slicks, but the way he got off the line and lap one convinced Niki Lauda that rain tyres that he and everyone else had chosen were not the right call. He changed early, and moments later, the 76 season was torn apart. An enormous accident, Lauda trapped in his burning car. Briton Guy Edwards managed to avoid the wreckage, but Brett Lunger was not so lucky. The Surtees slammed into the car. Edwards and Merzario dragged Lauda from what almost became his funeral pyre. With heavy hearts, the drivers started once more the German Grand Prix. Hunt taking the lead from Regazzoni, two Tyrrells snapping at his heels. But everybody's mind was on the fortunes of Niki Lauda. He'd been helicoptered to hospital in Mannheim and was in the intensive care unit. He was suffering from bad facial burning, from inhaling toxic smoke, and with several fractured bones. Doctors fought to save his life and stabilised him by Sunday evening. But by Tuesday, his condition had rapidly deteriorated, and a priest was rushed to the hospital to give Niki Lauda the last rites. But Lauda is made of stern stuff, and by Thursday of the week following his crash, he was starting to recover and officially out of danger. Lauda's fight back had begun. For the record, Hunt won the German Grand Prix from Scheckter and Mass, but there was little in the way of jollity. In the run-up to the Austrian Grand Prix, Ferrari withdrew both its entries. In his memoirs in 1978, Niki Lauda reckoned this was more down to team inefficiency than any sense of natural justice, and he said it served nobody any great favours, particularly not him. However, the lack of Ferraris did give James Hunt a very serious opportunity to close the points lead. Hunt now had to put all of the dramas of the season behind him and make the most around the Österreich ring of the absence of red and white cars. But he had Ulsterman John Watson in the Penske alongside him on the front row of the grid, and in Roger Penske's car in its best showing, it was Watson who led, Hunt struggling behind him. Handicapped by a badly understeering McLaren, Hunt was simply not on top form. Peterson led early on before making a mistake, and then John Watson took up the running for good. Well, this was a real heyday for the small teams. Ronnie Peterson in the March, John Watson in the Penske. And the Ulsterman, once out front, looked able to control the race. Hunt, meanwhile, was struggling to stay in the points. Once in front, Watson and the car seemed to be on a different plane. And the Ulsterman was able to reel off the laps at Zeltweg and claim his first ever Grand Prix victory, and the first for Roger Penske's fledgling Formula One outfit. A year after the tragic death of American hero Mark Donohue, Roger Penske and his team had good reason to celebrate in Austria. Jacques Laffite claimed a well-deserved second place, with Gunnar Nilsson in third for Lotus, but a disconsolate Hunt could manage no better than fourth. he was still 26 points adrift of Lauda. Zandvoort was the venue for the Dutch and European Grand Prix. Ferrari were back with Regazzoni, Lauda still on the injured list. There were rumours, though, in the paddock already surfacing that Lauda would race next time out at Monza. It seemed unlikely. In practice, Ronnie Peterson was in dominant form, taking pole position in the March. James Hunt alongside him on the front row. The Super Swede made the best of the start. Hunt battling with Watson into the first corner, coming out in second. Would this seaside circuit provide an opportunity for Peterson and March to shine? Or would it be Watson and Penske buoyed up by victory in Austria? Whatever, James Hunt in the McLaren had his hands full dealing with the Tiddlers. Peterson led, and Watson had moved up to second. The sole Ferrari, though, was behind Hunt, not able to help Lauda's championship challenge. March, Penske, McLaren and Lotus. But it was March and Penske who were setting the pace here at Zandvoort. A missed lunge on Peterson cost Watson second place. Hunt anxious to move on. But still, he had to worry about Peterson in front. For 11 glorious laps, Peterson led before fading oil pressure dropped him down the order. He wouldn't make the finish. Watson still looked strong in second place, but Regazzoni was challenging in the Ferrari and was soon up to third. Peterson would have to worry now about Andretti's Lotus. Peterson's race would end with oil pressure failure, Watson's with transmission woes, but James Hunt's would end with the checkered flag. Victory for Hunt in Holland. Regazzoni claimed second, Andretti in third. On the podium, Hunt, knowing the championship lead is down to just 14 points, can't resist a quick smoke. At Monza, the drama continued. Against all expectations and beggaring belief, Nicolaus Andreas Lauda, at death's door following his German Grand Prix smash and still swathed in bandages covering his severe burns, was back at the wheel of his Ferrari. An act of incredible bravery, which was lost on no one. Lauda qualified in 5th place, ahead of teammates Regazzoni and Reutemann. Well, all the focus was undeniably on Lauda, and few will have noticed a first career pole for Jacques Laffite in the Ligier Matra. However, in practice, Hunt's fuel was found to be illegal, and he was dropped down the order to the final row of the grid. The drama surely couldn't get any greater. From the start, Scheckter had the advantage, under-braking into the first chicane. Poleman Laffite's lead lasted just a few hundred yards. How would Lauda fare? How would his constitution hold up in the race? And how far up the order could Hunt get? A cautious start by the Ferrari driver brought the two closer together, but neither was in the points on the opening lap. For Hunt's story, he moved up to 12th place before coming off the track and retiring. Lauda, the slow start, allowing him to bed himself in as the race continued, and he would move up into the points. By lap 14, he was in 6th position. By lap 42, he'd passed the struggling Jody Scheckter for 5th. Early leader Depailler suffered from fuel pressure problems, and he was to drop down the order. In the closing stages, he too became a victim of Niki Lauda as the Austrian moved up to 4th place. From an accident that nearly claimed his life and should have finished his career, Niki Lauda staged one of sport's most dramatic recoveries. A personal victory of near unparalleled proportions was taking place. Lauda not only out of his hospital bed, but incredibly behind the wheel of a racing car once more. An enormous personal victory for Lauda, and victory in Italy was a personal one too for Clay Regazzoni. Ferrari had told him the day before that his services would no longer be required come the end of the season. This win tasted sweet. The championship battle moved on to Mosport in Canada, north of Toronto, and James Hunt claiming pole position from Ronnie Peterson, with Lauda in 6th position on the grid. Were things starting to turn in the Englishman's favour once more in this topsy-turvy season? Well, 80 laps of the demanding and difficult and dangerous Mosport track would certainly be a tall order for car and driver. Hunt badly needed a win. He'd lost his last victory in Brands Hatch. Now things needed to stay on the up for the Englishman. Peterson claimed the first corner from the outside of the front row. And as they headed into the hills, Super Swede stayed in front. Again, the Tyrrell's looking competitive. Lauda in the points already. Hunt needed a victory and needed it badly. Peterson's tenure out front lasted just 8 laps. And once the Englishman was by, he was gone. Well, this race was due to have seen the return of New Zealander Chris Amon, who had suffered a major accident with Harold Ertel earlier in the season. But Amon was never again to sit in a racing car. One of the most talented drivers of his generation, never managed a Formula One win. Carlos Reutemann had been replaced at Brabham by Australian Larry Perkins for the final 3 Grand Prix. But out front, the race was all about Hunt. Mario Andretti's Lotus tried its best to keep him in sight, but it was Depailler in the Tyrrell who came closest. Hunt eased away in the closing stages, petrol fumes almost rendering Depailler unconscious at the wheel of the Tyrrell. Niki Lauda was only to claim 8th, but Depailler thought himself lucky to have finished. The US Grand Prix East at Watkins Glen was the penultimate round of the World Championship. The 10th of October, and Hunt, the pole position man, still trying hard to close down Niki Lauda. Scheckter in the Tyrrell was on the outside of the front row of the grid. Could the six-wheeler claim another victory? Paye pushed a little too hard in practice. The Tyrrells and the increasingly competitive Lotus taking the place of the Ferrari as Hunt's race rivals. Watkins Glen was to see a fantastic two-way battle between the South African Jody Scheckter in the Tyrrell and Englishman James Hunt in the McLaren. In the end, Scheckter led most laps, 41 out of the 59, but Hunt led the one that really counted, the last one. Ferrari's early season edge had been lost. The cars no longer the outright pace setters everywhere. And Lauda was struggling not only to recover from his life-threatening injuries, but also for competitiveness with the Ferrari. A second consecutive win for Hunt in North America meant that he would have a 6-point lead going into the final race in Japan. But Lauda was back on the podium at Watkins Glen. Despite that, he felt the championship was done. Victory for Hunt, Scheckter taking second, and Lauda a brave third place. As they arrived in Japan, though, it was Lauda who was the points leader by 3 from Hunt, who had been stripped again of the points from the British Grand Prix. With its mile-long straight, Laffite reckons the new Fuji circuit to be the fastest in Formula One.
It's very quick, not easy. Interesting circuit because we haven't got one like this.
Je suis vraiment relaxé en ce moment. C'est juste, c'est l'atmosphère ici.
Playboy James Hunt looking as relaxed and laid back as ever. But with the topsy-turvy season coming to a conclusion, coming to Japan trailing Niki Lauda. Well, still, he must have fancied his chances. The Ferrari driver still a long way from fully fit. And the McLaren in race trim, it would seem, capable of beating the Ferrari in a straight fight. Sunday dawned wet and got progressively wetter. Long discussions between drivers and officials as to whether this race would ever get underway. Finally, it did so in appalling conditions under the shadow of Mount Fuji. 2 hours after the official start time, poleman Mario Andretti led the field away. Hunt alongside him on row 1, Lauda and Watson on row 2. Hunt escapes. With visibility to spare, he, alone in the field, can see where he's going. And it looks as though the championship is decided early. On lap 2, Lauda pulls into the pits, decides that his life is not worth risking for a mere championship in conditions like these. The Austrian leaves the circuit immediately and heads home. And indeed, he's at the airport at Tokyo when Lauda learns of what finally happened.
Pendant que Niki Lauda cherche à rallier l'Europe au plus vite, la course continue. 73 tours sont au programme et Hunt mène les 61 premiers. C'est alors que la pluie s'interrompt, que la piste sèche, tout va être remis en question. Les premiers pilotes s'arrêtent au stand pour changer de gomme. Depailler va faire de même. Hunt aussi, bien sûr, mais l'Anglais, handicapé par une crevaison lente, ne reprend la piste qu'en 5e position. Cravachant alors comme un forcené, il arrache finalement la 3e place. James Hunt va être champion du monde pour 1 point seulement, 69 contre 68 à Niki Lauda. Mario Andretti remporte ce Grand Prix à nul autre pareil. Le podium est organisé à la nuit tombante. Une dernière image étonnante pour une saison d'anthologie.